The room was filled with the quiet hum of conversations and the soft clinking of glasses, as the most powerful people in the business world gathered for one of the most anticipated meetings of the year. Among them was a billionaire whose name alone could make headlines, a man known for his immense wealth, ruthless business strategies, and an ego that seemed almost larger than life. He walked into the room with a calm confidence, wearing a perfectly tailored suit and an expression that suggested he was already in control of everything around him. Staff members and junior employees were quietly waiting, hoping to learn something or perhaps to impress him, but the atmosphere immediately changed when he glanced at the assembled staff and casually said, "I don't shake hands with staff." A hush fell over the room as everyone processed his words. Some whispered to each other in disbelief, while others tried to hide their reactions. The audacity of the billionaire was shocking, yet no one dared to challenge him directly. His wealth and influence created an invisible barrier that made most people hesitant to speak, but not everyone reacted with fear or silence. Among the staff stood a black woman, someone who had already built a reputation for being smart, strategic, and fearless. In her work, she had seen arrogance and prejudice before, but something about the billionaire's statement sparked a fire inside her. She didn't flinch or look away. Instead, she observed him carefully, studying his behavior, tone, and the way he carried himself. There was no anger in her eyes, only focus and determination, as if she was already thinking several steps ahead. The meeting began with the usual discussions about investments, partnerships, and growth plans, but the billionaire's comment lingered in the air like an unshakable shadow. Colleagues tried to maintain their composure, exchanging polite nods and smiles, but it was clear that tension had settled in the room. Everyone was wondering how someone could be so dismissive and condescending, especially when surrounded by talented and capable people. Yet, the black woman remained calm, her mind working quietly behind the scenes. She knew that this was not just a moment of disrespect, it was an opportunity, an opening that, if handled correctly, could change the entire trajectory of the meeting. She wasn't going to let arrogance intimidate her, and she certainly wasn't going to let it go unnoticed. As the billionaire continued speaking about his achievements and future plans, she quietly assessed the situation. Thinking about the investors in the room and what mattered most to them, she realized that his arrogance might actually be a weakness, a flaw that could be leveraged if approached strategically. Unlike the others who were either intimidated or distracted, she was laser-focused on the possibilities. Every word he spoke, every gesture he made, was a piece of the puzzle she was already starting to solve. The room, filled with impressive wealth and power, suddenly felt like a chessboard, and she was determined to make her move at the right moment. Outside the meeting room, whispers of the billionaire's attitude had already begun circulating among the staff. Social media chatter hinted at the arrogance and dismissiveness, yet most people could only speculate about what might happen next. But the black woman wasn't interested in gossip or speculation. She was ready to act, ready to turn the tables, and ready to prove that intelligence, strategy, and courage were far more valuable than status or money alone. In that moment, she embodied calm determination, the kind of quiet confidence that doesn't need to announce itself but immediately commands attention. The first part of the story set the stage for an unforgettable sequence of events. The billionaire believed he was untouchable, that his wealth and reputation could shield him from consequences. Yet, little did he know that a staff member, underestimated by him and unnoticed by many, was about to change everything. Her mind was already plotting, her eyes quietly studying the room, and her heart steady with determination. This was the beginning of a story about courage, intelligence, and the power of standing tall in the face of arrogance. It was a moment that would prove that true strength isn't measured by money or titles, but by strategy, confidence, and the refusal to be dismissed. By the time the meeting officially began, everyone in the room had noticed the subtle shift. The billionaire's arrogance was still palpable, but a quiet tension lingered in the air, a sense that something unexpected was about to happen. The black woman, calm and poised, was already several steps ahead, ready to turn what seemed like a moment of humiliation into a story of triumph. The stage was set, the players were in place, and the audience, staff, investors, and colleagues alike, was about to witness an unforgettable moment in real-life business history. This was only the beginning, but it was enough to show that even the most powerful figures could be challenged by intelligence, courage, and strategy. The room had gone quiet after the billionaire's cold remark, "I don't shake hands with staff," and the silence was heavy, almost suffocating. Staff shifted nervously in their seats, glancing at each other as if searching for someone brave enough to respond, but no one dared. His words had cut through the air like a knife, sharp and deliberate, meant to remind everyone of their place. Some tried to maintain polite expressions, nodding along with his speech, while others fumed quietly inside. Their pride wounded but their fear keeping them still. Yet among all the restrained faces, one stood out, calm, composed, and utterly unshaken. The black woman leaned slightly back in her chair, her eyes fixed on him, watching, analyzing, and quietly challenging him without a single word. It was clear to everyone that this wasn't just a casual comment, it was a statement designed to intimidate, to assert dominance over anyone who might dare think of themselves as equal. The billionaire smiled slightly, clearly pleased with himself, enjoying the uncomfortable tension he had created. He believed he had the upper hand, that his wealth and reputation made him untouchable, but he had underestimated the intelligence in the room, and he had certainly underestimated her. The black woman had encountered arrogance before, but she had learned that moments like these were opportunities in disguise, opportunities to show resilience, courage, and strategy. Her mind worked quickly, evaluating every possibility. She considered the reactions of the investors, the media presence, and the staff around her. She knew that a wrong move could backfire, but a well-timed response could change everything. Instead of reacting with anger or defensiveness, she chose patience, letting the billionaire's arrogance fill the room with overconfidence. The tension built as he continued talking about his achievements, investments, and business plans. Never once realizing that his words were creating a perfect setup for her, every gesture he made, every condescending smile, was like a puzzle piece she was fitting together, preparing for the moment she would act. Around her, the room buzzed with whispers and speculation. Some staff were secretly admiring her calm demeanor, others were anxious, unsure of what she might do. The billionaire remained oblivious, convinced that fear and respect for his status would prevent anyone from challenging him. But she knew that real power didn't come from money or titles, it came from strategy, intelligence, and the courage to act at the right time. The staff's unease became part of the story, setting the stage for a dramatic shift that no one could have predicted. She noticed subtle clues in the billionaire's behavior, the way his eyes flicked when he spoke to investors, the way he paused when he expected agreement, the slight tightening of his hands when he was challenged in conversation. She filed each observation carefully in her mind, knowing they would be useful. She also assessed the room, noting which investors were quietly skeptical, which staff members were impressed by her poise, and which were silently rooting for her to succeed. The scene was tense, like a high-stakes game of chess, and she was several moves ahead. Finally, the moment of suspense reached its peak when the billionaire leaned back, arms crossed, and smirked, confident that he had shown everyone their place. The staff exchanged uneasy glances, wondering if anyone would dare respond, but the black woman didn't need to speak immediately. Her presence alone was enough to signal that something was about to happen. She was calm, collected, and entirely in control of her emotions. She had learned that arrogance is often strongest before a fall. And she intended to be the one to show him that wealth and status could never replace intelligence, strategy, and courage. As the meeting continued, it became clear that the billionaire's arrogance had done more than insult the staff. It had revealed a weakness, a blind spot that only someone paying attention could exploit. The black woman recognized this instantly, and a quiet determination settled over her. She would not allow a dismissive remark to define her, and she certainly would not let it define the outcome of the meeting. In that moment, the room became a stage for something extraordinary, a story of respect, resilience, and empowerment. All eyes may have been on the billionaire, but the real story was quietly taking shape, and it was about to unfold in a way no one expected. While the billionaire continued to speak, his voice full of self-importance and authority, the black woman sat quietly, her mind moving faster than anyone else in the room. She wasn't just listening to his words, she was analyzing every gesture, every tone, and every subtle hint of overconfidence. Unlike the others who were intimidated or distracted, she saw a pattern, a series of opportunities hidden in his arrogance. The billionaire's dismissive attitude was more than disrespect, it was a doorway, and she intended to walk through it carefully. She thought about the investors present, the people who held the power to decide the outcome of millions of dollars in backing. She knew that while they respected the billionaire's success, many of them were quietly looking for someone with real insight, someone with the courage to make bold decisions when it mattered most. The black woman understood that in high-stakes business, timing and strategy were everything. A single smart move could turn the tables completely, and she was ready to make that move. Her strategy began to form in her mind like a map, each step carefully planned. She knew she couldn't respond with anger, because that would make the billionaire defensive. Instead, she would wait for the perfect moment, gather information, and then use logic, professionalism, and confidence to shift the power balance subtly but unmistakably. She imagined the reactions of everyone in the room, staff, investors, colleagues. If she executed her plan correctly, the thought energized her, giving her the calm certainty that she was exactly where she needed to be. She considered his weaknesses, small but crucial. The billionaire relied too much on status, wealth, and intimidation, believing that respect could be demanded rather than earned. He underestimated subtle intelligence, underestimated people who could see the bigger picture, underestimated her. That oversight was his biggest mistake, and she intended to use it. Every question he asked, every point he made about investments or partnerships, became part of her strategy. She would align her insights with what the investors truly valued, proving that competence and foresight mattered more than ego or money. As the minutes passed, she quietly gathered her thoughts, organizing them in a way that allowed her to present a plan that was undeniable. She was aware of the tension in the room, the way some investors were leaning in slightly, curious about what she might do, and how even the billionaire was beginning to notice her composure. There was a silent acknowledgement building around her. People sensed that she was someone to watch, someone who could turn this meeting upside down. She also thought about her own risks, knowing that making a bold move required courage. She had to act carefully to avoid appearing confrontational or arrogant. She needed to communicate intelligence without ego, confidence without aggression. Her mind raced through scenarios, calculating each possibility, and adjusting her approach for maximum impact. In that process, she also recognized the importance of patience, understanding that a well-timed move would be more powerful than any immediate reaction. Her strategy was not just about proving a point, it was about results. She wanted the investors to see the value of her ideas, her vision, and her ability to act decisively. She wanted the billionaire to realize that respect could not be demanded through arrogance alone, that true influence came from skill, insight, and courage. She felt a quiet satisfaction knowing that she was ready, that her preparation and understanding gave her an edge no amount of wealth or status could erase. By the time the billionaire finished his long-winded speech, the black woman had every step of her plan mapped out. Her eyes flicked around the room, noting subtle reactions and adjusting for the next stage. The moment of action was approaching, and she could feel the tension in the air. It was more than a business meeting now. It was a test of intelligence, courage, and strategy, and she was prepared to win. She leaned slightly forward, a subtle shift that signaled focus and readiness. While the billionaire remained unaware that his arrogance had created a perfect opening, the room was quiet, the atmosphere thick with anticipation, and her mind was sharper than ever. Every detail mattered, every decision counted, and in that moment, it became clear that she was no ordinary staff member. She was a force to be reckoned with. And the world was about to see it. The moment had arrived, the one the black woman had been waiting for. She took a slow, deliberate breath, feeling the weight of the room, the gaze of investors, and even the subtle scrutiny of the billionaire himself. Her mind was steady, her plan clear, and her confidence unshakable. She knew that this was not about confrontation, but about demonstrating her intelligence, her strategy, and her ability to act decisively under pressure. As the billionaire continued to speak, praising himself and highlighting his achievements, she raised her hand slightly, just enough to draw attention without being disruptive. The room shifted subtly, the investors noticing the poised gesture, curious about what she might say. Some staff exchanged glances, unsure of how bold her move would be, but they could sense that something extraordinary was about to happen. She began speaking, her voice calm but commanding, every word measured, every point precise. As she outlined a strategy that no one, not even the billionaire, could ignore, she highlighted market insights, investment opportunities, and potential risks, weaving them together with a clarity and confidence that drew the attention of every investor in the room. Her words were not a challenge, they were a solution, a roadmap that was impossible to dismiss. The billionaire's confident smile faltered slightly as he realized she was not just responding, she was leading. Her ideas resonated with the investors, their eyes lighting up with interest. Some whispered to each other, impressed by the depth of her analysis, and the boldness of her presentation. It was clear that the power dynamic had begun to shift, albeit subtly, as the room's attention moved away from arrogance to competence. She didn't stop there, she anticipated objections before they could arise, answering questions with precision and confidence. Every counterpoint was addressed calmly, demonstrating not only knowledge but foresight. The investors were leaning in, nodding subtly, while the billionaire's expression grew tense. The black woman had turned the tables without ever raising her voice or displaying aggression. Her strategy was working perfectly, and the room could feel the change. Then came the defining moment. She proposed a financial move that was bold but calculated, a plan that could recover massive backing that had previously seemed uncertain. She presented it logically, persuasively, and with undeniable confidence. The investors reacted immediately, impressed by her insight. Some whispered excitedly to one another, clearly considering her plans seriously, while the billionaire looked on, stunned, realizing for the first time that his dismissal of staff had been a mistake. It was in that moment that she fully reclaimed control. The room that had once echoed with tension and silent judgment now hummed with curiosity, respect, and admiration. Her careful preparation, her strategic thinking, and her unwavering courage had combined to create an undeniable impact. The billionaire, accustomed to unquestioned authority, was forced to reconsider. His arrogance had blinded him to the power of insight and determination, and now the room saw it too. The black woman's bold move was not just about recovering investments, it was a demonstration of respect, intelligence, and strategic brilliance. She had taken a moment of disrespect and transformed it into an opportunity to lead, inspire, and succeed. Investors began nodding, some making quick notes, others whispering excitedly, clearly impressed by the clarity and impact of her proposal. The shift was complete. The room had recognized her as a force to be reckoned with. By the time she concluded, the billionaire was silent, a rare moment of humility crossing his face. Staff members exchanged looks of awe, inspired by her courage and skill, and the investors were clearly convinced of her expertise. The black woman had turned a moment of tension and disrespect into an unforgettable victory, not through confrontation, not through anger, but through preparation, confidence, and a perfectly executed strategy. It was a defining moment in her career, one that would be remembered not for the billionaire's arrogance, but for her intelligence, bravery, and boldness. She had proven that true power was not in wealth or status, but in the ability to act decisively, strategically, and fearlessly. The room was silent for a moment, the energy charged with respect, anticipation, and admiration, and everyone knew that something extraordinary had just occurred. The room was still charged with energy after the black woman's bold presentation. Her plan had captured everyone's attention, and now all eyes were on the billionaire, who sat in stunned silence, clearly unprepared for the turn of events. His arrogance, once a shield, now felt like a weight pressing down, and for the first time, he realized that power could not be commanded through money alone. Investors began quietly discussing her proposal, nodding in agreement and exchanging impressed glances. The black woman watched calmly, noting every reaction, every subtle shift in body language. She understood that this was her moment, the opportunity to solidify her position and ensure that the plan she had laid out would not just be considered, but fully embraced. She leaned forward slightly, projecting confidence, authority, and clarity, without ever seeming aggressive. The billionaire tried to interrupt, his voice sharp and slightly frustrated, but she remained composed, answering his questions with precise, logical responses that left no room for doubt. Each answer further strengthened her position, and the investors began seeing her as the guiding force they needed. Their confidence in her insight and judgment grew with every word. The billionaire's attempts to regain control only highlighted the gap between arrogance and true competence. She then introduced the final piece of her strategy, a calculated move that not only addressed previous concerns but also maximized the potential for the $2 billion backing. The investors leaned in, clearly impressed by her foresight. Her reasoning was flawless, her approach professional and persuasive, and even the most skeptical members of the room began nodding in quiet agreement. The black woman had created a momentum that was unstoppable, and the room had shifted from tension to admiration. As the billionaire listened, his expression changed from surprise to disbelief. The dismissive confidence he had relied on was crumbling before his eyes. He realized that his actions had underestimated the black woman's skill, intelligence, and courage, and now he was witnessing the consequences of that mistake. Every investor's approving glance reinforced the reality. She had not just presented a plan. She had commanded respect and authority. The staff who had once felt powerless now saw her as a leader. Her ability to act decisively under pressure and turn a disrespectful moment into a strategic victory was inspiring. Many of them quietly admired her, silently realizing that true influence came not from titles or wealth, but from intelligence, preparation, and courage. The room that had been filled with tension and intimidation was now buzzing with quiet admiration and renewed energy. She continued to speak with calm assurance, outlining the steps to implement the plan, detailing how the $2 billion backing could be secured and how potential risks could be minimized. Investors began openly nodding and making notes, clearly impressed by her vision and execution. Even those who had doubted initially were now convinced. The balance of power had shifted completely, and the billionaire, once the unquestioned center of authority, was now on the sidelines, watching as she led the room with poise and precision. Her strategy was flawless because it combined preparation, insight, and timing. She had turned a moment of disrespect into a demonstration of skill and leadership, showing that intelligence and courage could outshine arrogance every time. By the end of the discussion, the room was united around her proposal. The investors were ready to support her plan fully, and even the billionaire had no choice but to acknowledge the strength of her position. The black woman had achieved something extraordinary. She had not only recovered the $2 billion backing but also earned respect, admiration, and recognition. The power dynamic had been completely reversed, and the lesson was clear. Arrogance could never defeat preparation, strategy, and fearless intelligence. She had proven that with focus, courage, and calculated action, it was possible to turn even the most challenging situation into a victory. As the meeting concluded, the atmosphere was different, charged with respect and excitement. The black woman had transformed a room full of tension into a space where ideas, skill, and leadership prevailed. She had turned the tables completely, showing that real power lies not in wealth, but in the ability to act wisely, boldly, and strategically. This moment would be remembered as a defining victory, not for the billionaire's wealth, but for her intelligence, confidence, and remarkable courage. The room had shifted completely, from tension and doubt to energy and admiration. The black woman had executed her strategy flawlessly, and the $2 billion backing, which had once seemed uncertain, was now fully within reach. Investors were nodding, exchanging quick whispers of approval, and some were already signaling their commitment. The billionaire, who had entered the room with arrogance and dismissal, sat frozen, stunned into silence by the unfolding turn of events. Her calm authority and precise reasoning had captivated the room, turning disbelief into trust. The investors saw a leader who was not just intelligent but courageous, someone capable of navigating high-pressure situations with clarity and strategy. The black woman had proven that even in a room dominated by wealth and power, knowledge, preparation, and confidence could command respect. She didn't shout. She didn't demand attention. She simply presented the facts, the strategy, and the vision. And the room responded. The billionaire's expression slowly changed from shock to frustration. His usual dominance had been challenged in the most public way, and he had no choice but to acknowledge the effectiveness of her plan. For the first time, he realized that status and money could not replace insight, strategic thinking, and courage. The staff who had once felt powerless now watched in awe, inspired by how she had turned disrespect into triumph. They saw her as a role model, someone who had refused to be dismissed, and who had acted with intelligence and determination under pressure. Her triumph wasn't just about financial success, it was about respect, empowerment, and skill. The room had witnessed an unforgettable display of strategic brilliance, and the investors were ready to follow her lead. Some were taking notes, others quietly praising her foresight, and everyone understood that she had changed the dynamic completely. The billionaire, accustomed to unquestioned authority, could only sit back, realizing that he had underestimated the power of intellect and courage. The moment reached its peak when the final agreement was confirmed, and the $2 billion backing was officially secured. The room erupted in quiet applause and approving murmurs, acknowledging her achievement. It was a victory that resonated beyond money or influence. It was a statement about capability, resilience, and the ability to act decisively when it mattered most. The black woman had turned a situation that began with disrespect into a landmark success, proving that arrogance could be met with intelligence and strategy. Even the staff who had been nervous at the start of the meeting felt a renewed sense of confidence and inspiration. They realized that courage and preparation could overcome the most intimidating obstacles, that one person's skill and determination could shift a room full of power and influence. The black woman had become an example of leadership and empowerment, showing that respect is earned through action, insight, and fearlessness, not demanded through wealth or status. The billionaire finally spoke, his voice subdued, almost reflective, acknowledging, without saying it directly, that he had been wrong. His arrogance had blinded him, and he had learned a rare lesson in humility. The staff and investors, meanwhile, continued to process what had just happened. Many quietly celebrated her achievement, understanding that she had achieved something extraordinary in the face of public dismissal. As she gathered her materials and prepared to leave, she felt a sense of quiet satisfaction, not from defeating the billionaire, but from proving that strategy, courage, and intelligence could prevail. She had taken control of a tense situation, executed her plan with precision, and earned both financial success and the respect of everyone in the room. The $2 billion backing was more than a number. It symbolized her triumph over arrogance, bias, and underestimation. By the time the meeting ended, everyone understood that they had witnessed a defining moment. The black woman's triumph had transformed not only the outcome of the meeting but also the perception of leadership, courage, and strategic thinking. She had shown that intelligence and determination could change everything, and that respect is truly earned by action and skill. The room, once filled with tension and doubt, now hummed with admiration and inspiration, and her victory would be remembered long after the meeting concluded. The room had settled after the excitement of the meeting, but the impact of what had just occurred lingered in the air. The black woman's actions had done more than secure the $2 billion backing. They had left lessons for everyone present, lessons about courage, strategy, and the importance of confidence in moments where others might falter. Investors and staff alike were reflecting quietly, realizing that the events they had witnessed were not just about money or power, but about how intelligence and preparation could turn even the most challenging situation into a victory. The billionaire, who had entered the room full of pride and dismissiveness, now wore a look of humbled reflection. For the first time, he understood that wealth and status alone could not command respect, that even the most influential person could be outmaneuvered by skill, courage, and foresight. He had seen someone act decisively, thoughtfully, and fearlessly, and he had no choice but to acknowledge the lesson. The arrogance that had once given him confidence had now been revealed as a weakness, and it was a lesson he would likely carry forward. For the staff, the lesson was different but equally powerful. They had observed someone turn a moment of disrespect into a triumph. They saw firsthand that preparation, intelligence, and calm confidence could overcome intimidation. The black woman had demonstrated that respect is not given automatically, it is earned through action, insight, and courage. Her example inspired them to think differently about their own potential, about how they could act decisively even when faced with challenging circumstances. The investors, too, took their own lessons from the day. They realized that in high-stakes situations, true leadership is not always about who speaks the loudest or who has the most influence. It is about who can see the full picture, make strategic decisions, and execute them with precision. They recognized that bias and arrogance could blind even the most powerful, and that talent and preparation can emerge as the most valuable assets in any boardroom or negotiation. The black woman herself reflected on the events with quiet satisfaction. Her victory had not come from aggression or confrontation, but from clarity, intelligence, and a careful understanding of timing. She knew that the lesson for her was about staying confident, trusting her instincts, and believing in her ability to act even in difficult situations. She had turned a challenge into an opportunity, showing that resilience and strategic thinking were more powerful than intimidation or social hierarchy. As the meeting concluded, the room was alive with conversations about what had happened. People discussed how courage and preparation could redefine power dynamics, how a single well-executed plan could achieve results that seemed impossible. The impact extended beyond the financial success. It was a moment of empowerment, an example of how determination and insight could overcome prejudice and dismissal. The lessons of the day were clear: arrogance can only take someone so far, and true Influence comes from skill, strategy, and the ability to act decisively. Even the Billionaire's team had learned, albeit quietly, that underestimating talent based on appearances or titles could have serious consequences. They realized that supporting capable individuals and respecting their expertise could be far more beneficial than trying to assert dominance through condescension. The black woman had demonstrated that value lies in action and competence, not in social status, wealth, or intimidation. By the time everyone left the room, the story had already begun to take shape in whispers and conversations. The meeting would be remembered not for the billionaire's arrogance, but for her courage, strategy, and the remarkable recovery of the $2 billion backing. The lessons learned would influence future decisions, interactions, and the way people approached challenges in both business and life. It was a day that proved that intelligence, preparation, and bravery always leave a lasting impression. And for everyone present, the final takeaway was inspiring and clear. No matter the power, wealth, or status of those around you, preparation, insight, and courage can always turn a challenging moment into an extraordinary victory. The black woman had taught a timeless lesson that would resonate long after the meeting ended, a lesson about respect, empowerment, and the unstoppable force of someone who believes in their abilities and refuses to be underestimated. The aftermath of the meeting was more than just financial success. It was a story of courage, strategy, and triumph over arrogance. The black woman had not only recovered the $2 billion backing but had also inspired everyone present to rethink what true leadership and power meant. Investors, staff, and colleagues alike were quietly acknowledging that respect is earned, not demanded, and that intelligence and courage often speak louder than wealth and status. As she walked through the office after the meeting, she noticed the subtle changes in the way people looked at her. There was admiration, respect, and an unspoken acknowledgement of her skill and bravery. Some staff members smiled quietly, inspired by her example, understanding that their own actions could make a difference in challenging situations. Even those who had doubted her now seemed convinced that she had something extraordinary, a combination of intelligence, confidence, and calm determination that could overcome almost anything. The billionaire, once so confident and untouchable, was left reflecting on the events with an unusual humility. He realized that his arrogance had been a weakness, and that true influence and respect could not be bought or demanded. The lesson was clear: underestimating someone based on appearances or social position can lead to unexpected consequences, and brilliance, preparation, and courage always find a way to shine. For the investors, the experience was equally powerful. They saw how someone who had been publicly dismissed could turn a situation around and achieve results that were nothing short of remarkable. They began to appreciate the value of listening, observing, and supporting those who act with insight and confidence. The black woman had become a symbol of strategic brilliance, showing that careful planning, courage, and intelligence could lead to extraordinary success. Her triumph also sent a message to the world beyond the walls of that office. A story began to spread about how she had taken a moment of disrespect and turned it into an unforgettable victory. It was a reminder that no obstacle, no insult, and no act of arrogance could stop someone who was prepared, confident, and courageous. The $2 billion backing was more than just money. It was a symbol of resilience, strategic thinking, and the power of believing in oneself. She reflected quietly on what had happened, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment, not because she had bested the billionaire, but because she had shown the room, the investors, and herself that preparation, intelligence, and courage could triumph over bias, disrespect, and arrogance. The experience reinforced her belief that challenges are often opportunities in disguise, and that moments of doubt or dismissal can be transformed into the most powerful victories. As colleagues and staff gathered around to congratulate her, the black woman spoke with humility and insight, reminding everyone that success comes not from fear or intimidation, but from clear thinking, strategic action, and the courage to act when it matters most. Her words inspired others to take bold steps in their own careers, to trust their knowledge and skills, and to approach challenges with determination and confidence. The billionaire, though humbled, had also learned a lesson. His confidence and authority were shaken, and he began to see that respect must be earned, and that talent and insight are sometimes found in the most unexpected places. For him, it was a rare opportunity to reflect on his own behavior and the way he treated others, a reminder that humility and recognition of others' abilities are essential in leadership. By the end of the day, the story had already taken on a life of its own. becoming a tale of inspiration for anyone who had faced disrespect or underestimation. It reminded everyone that no challenge is too great, and that courage, intelligence, and preparation can turn even the most difficult moments into defining victories. The black woman had proven that real power comes not from wealth or status, but from the ability to think strategically, act confidently, and rise above adversity. As the office quieted and the meeting rooms emptied, the lesson remained clear. Her story was more than just about recovering a financial backing. It was a message to the world that anyone, regardless of circumstances, could achieve greatness with courage, intelligence, and determination, and for everyone who had witnessed it, the moment would be remembered forever as a testament to the unstoppable force of a person who believes in themselves and refuses to be underestimated.